I'm strong to the finish 'cause I eats me spinach is one of Popeye the Sailor Man's favorite quotes. Wrong, says Italian environmental journalist Andrea Bertaglio. He says Popeye helped create the perception that all you need are veggies to live a healthy life. It seems the whole world has suddenly decided not to eat meat, says Bertaglio. He says, but have you ever wondered why? Well, he did, and so he set out to find out the answer. Namely, he discovered that the editorial world, when it comes to diet, nutrition, and health, is much more interested in selling papers and garnering ad revenue than in the truth. In Bertaglio's book, In Defense of Meat, he points out not only is spinach not the best source of iron, meat is, and it's not just iron that vegetables don't deliver on the way meat does. Bertaglio says meat provides the body with significant quantities of essential micronutrients such as iron, zinc, selenium, and B vitamins in an easily digestible form. Bertaglio says some vegetables may contain vitamins and minerals in greater quantities than in meat, but in reality, the human body isn't capable of assimilating or can only assimilate a very low percentage of them. In fact, plant nutrients are trapped in an insoluble and indigestible matrix of fibers that make them difficult to absorb and use. Vegetables also contain anti-nutritional factors such as phytic acid, which binds minerals, making them less available to our body. So yes, the nutrients in the vegetables are there, but they're not as easily usable. I invited Andrea Bertaglio to join me for a conversation that matters about eating a balanced diet that includes meat and vegetables. Andrea, thank you for joining me. Welcome to our show. You're coming to us from Germany at the moment. Tell me, why did you write this book, In Defense of Meat?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm very honored to be with you guys. And well, I have many reasons which took me to write this book, but the main one is that it's connected to what you were talking about the nutritional part, because I'm an environmental journalist and I care about environment and sustainability. So, of course, the meat impact on the environment is important. But when I had the chance to interview a pediatrician, the head of pediatrician of an hospital in northern Italy, because I'm from Italy, I'm in Germany right now, but I'm from Italy. Um, well, she told me things that touched me very much as a father of two small children. So, the fact that after 40 years of career, she was finding uh, in her hospital children with major diseases connected to a vegan diet improvised by the parents, just because these parents have seen some videos on YouTube or read a post on a blog and so on. Well, it touched me a lot. It made me feel a big responsibility as a communicator, and took me to take a stand, strangely, in defense of meat, which is something you don't find very often among people dealing with environment.
Well, I know when you say strangely, I have to ask, when you first started to, go down this path, were you double checking to make sure that where you were going was accurate? Because you must have initially gone, yeah, this just does not fit with what I believe to be the truth.
Absolutely. I took for granted for years, like many people and many colleagues, that meat production was evil, that livestock was only a problem for the climate and the environment. And I wrote, I have to admit, a couple of articles taking for granted these facts, which were not facts. And I had the chance to realize that because I started to collaborate with a project in Italy called, in English, the Sustainable Meat Project, which gave me access to many informations about the livestock sector. And I figure out that many things are not known, first of all, and that the importance of livestock farming and of meat production for the environment is huge. It's I mean, livestock is also important for the environment, and people, particularly in the West, don't know it.
Really? Like, I had the former president of a university in here, and I was telling him that I had been doing some research about the role that cattle play in the environment, and he was not willing to accept that there would be a positive potential benefit to having livestock or cattle. You must have come up against a tremendous amount of resistance to that idea.
Well, absolutely. First of all, I met as well these kind of experts who are often academics and people very aware of their knowledge. The point is that their knowledge is stuck on the books or in their offices. And they had to deal with people telling me that it's not necessary to visit a farm to know how a farm is working or their impact, because I was recommending them to speak with farmers and to deepen the subject on the field, literally. And yes, I had a tremendous resistance. First of all, I lost hundreds, probably thousands of followers on the social media after I wrote this book. I got well, some threat or many, these typical messages wishing you death and cancer and so on and so forth. These sad reactions, and yes, had resistance also from the publishing world, because it took me quite a while to find a publisher willing to publish this book, particularly a couple of years ago when it's been released in Italy, because I've been told explicitly at this moment, at this in this period, these topics are not trendy and they're not selling. So it was scary because they were going to, as they did, publish only vegan-friendly publications, which is giving a lot of reasons to think about also of the media in general, I would say.
Let's talk about cattle and their relationship to the environment first, and then we'll talk about the meat that is the byproduct of those animals and how it interacts with our body. What did you learn about the role that cattle play in the biogas life cycle? The sequestering of carbon into grasses, the animals eat them, how important those grasses are in the whole carbon cycle, and how without those large grazing ruminants, those grasslands may not survive.
Exactly. I've learned, and even if you already interviewed experts like Professor Mittlöhner or Professor Allen, and I recommend your audience to watch those videos, and they can explain it much better than myself. But through these experts, let's say, I could learn that grazing animals and livestock in general are important also in terms of global cooling. So the fact that ruminants in particular are eating the grass is true. They emit methane, which is a strong greenhouse gas. The point is that this gas is staying in the atmosphere around 10 years instead of 1,000 years like the CO2. And then converted in CO2 is coming back through the photosynthesis to the plants that these animals are eating. So it's a cycle. While the CO2 produced by burning fossil fuels is just going from underground to our atmosphere. So it's not the same thing. It's one of the reasons for which comparing the emissions of livestock and the emissions of traffic or so transportations or energy production is senseless. So it's not the same thing. We're not talking about the same thing. On top, animals, farm animals are eating 86% of non-edible vegetables. So it takes me to remind the audience that we are constantly hearing that we could convert all this land on which animals are raised to produce vegetables. It's not true. It's not possible. Simply because 3/4 of the lands on the earth are not are not good for agriculture. So it's a series of myths that I wanted to contribute to dismantle, to question.
So you do this research, it must have been eye-opening to you because, as you say, your commitment is to the environment. Well, as you pointed out, when we burn a fossil fuel, we're taking a carbon that's been sequestered underground and we're putting it back into the atmosphere from whence it came maybe millions of years ago. With livestock, it's a different cycle. But this still must have been challenging for you because I know how important environmental protection is to you.
Yes, let's say that environment is a part of my concern. Let's talk about sustainability. So environment is just a piece of the whole picture. We need also to take to care of economics, of society, of culture, traditions. I mean, livestock and meat production is not only about raising animals and eating meat. It's about centuries of development. Is about traditions, as I said. In Italy, on top, food is very important, and it has also a huge cultural importance. It's about economics because these people are struggling to survive nowadays. I mean, farmers. It's about many other things. It's the fact to protect the environment then is also an economical and a social matter.
So what did you learn about animal husbandry then? Because you can't help but at times go, okay, well, we're raising these animals in essence just to kill them so that we can eat them. And do we treat them well? Do farmers actually really have a passion for and a love for these animals that are also their economic lifeblood?
In most cases, yes, because we watched all these videos of farms in which some sadistic, crazy person is mistreating an animal, but that's not the reality. That's not. I mean, it's something making the people sharing these videos, spreading these videos, making audience or get donations, because of course. I don't know if in English is correct, but it's louder a tree falling than a forest growing. So, of course, they take what is not working well and they spread the message that all the sector is like that. But no, it's not true because it doesn't make any sense. A farmer is living for his animal because these animals are his life. Because when you're a farmer, you don't have Sundays, you don't have Christmas, you don't have. I mean, you need to take care of your animals 24/7, and these animals are his or her source of income. And when you don't treat well an animal, the products are not having a good quality. So the vast majority of farmers are treating well their animals, and I've seen them. I've seen people, and they help people with my own two hands in giving birth to a calf in the middle of the night. It was a family moment. There is a big respect behind this job since ever in every culture. On top nowadays, in Europe at least, but also in North America, I see it's getting much forward. There is a very rigid legislation about animal welfare. You can get penalties up to 60,000 euros if you don't treat well animals. On top, in Italy, it's also you can go to jail. So it's you have many reasons to treat well your animals, and but the message we constantly hear is that farmers are a bunch of sadistic people beating up cows and pigs. It's not true. Simply.
No. Yeah. So you talked about the fact that cattle consume an enormous amount of vegetation that we cannot, and then they bioconvert it into an easily acceptable and accessible protein that we can consume. Part of the argument, though, is no, the consumption of too much red meat is bad for you and that it causes cancer. What did you find?
Well, the common sense of our grandparents is saying that everything that you eat or you do in excess is bad for your health, and it's bad in general. So meat, like everything else, must be eaten in moderate amounts. So the nutritional guidelines in Italy, in Europe, are speaking of 550 grams per week. So we're speaking of eating meat a couple of times per day. So yes, often, maybe in North America even more, we are tending, or somebody's tending to eat too much meat, even if we need to consider the real consumption and not the apparent consumption, because we take always in consideration the estimation on the carcass of the animals. So we constantly hear that we eat 100 kilos or pounds of meat per year, but it's not like that because we don't eat the entire animal. Anyway, this is another subject. So yes, it's meat must be eaten consciously. So it must be part of a complete diet. So I'm not going to say eat meat every day. I'm not going to say with this book meat is not impacting the environment to be produced. I'm just saying pay attention because we just don't know that, as you say, the such a huge amount of vegetables that we could not eat at all are converted in a very noble protein, so in very valuable food.
Well, it's that protein that matters. Over the course of a day and a number of days, as we're moving around, our bodies start to break down and we lose, that protein that forms our muscles and, the structure of our bodies. And they said we need to replace it. And the source of replacing that was an animal byproduct. Now, they also said you only need a piece about that big. It doesn't have to be like a massive steak that you might get in a restaurant, especially in the United States, but you needed to have access to that animal protein.
Absolutely, yes. Particularly for some category of people. Unfortunately I had to hear elderly people with medical doctors telling them to reduce meat, which is the worst thing to do because when you are getting old, you tend to lose your muscle mass, and meat is the only one helping you to avoid it. Or pregnant women, or teenagers, or people practicing sport or physical activity. For everybody, meat is necessary in appropriate amounts, as we said, but elderly people, young people, and so on are in even bigger need of meat. And yes, not necessarily a steak of 16 ounce, but proper amounts. And again, this very interested marketing-driven veg propaganda, let's call it like that, is taking many people with the excuse of the climate protection to cut out meat, maybe in periods of their life in which they should even not think of that.
I feel it's important to touch on the role that meat and our ability to actually cook meat, what role that played in the development of the human brain over the last 100,000 years or so. It's our ability to break down those proteins, and by cooking it has really played a very, very large part in the development of the prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, absolutely. We are what we are. We are the human beings that we are now because of meat. We can say that without any doubt. I know that there are people willing to take human evolution and to rewrite it from scratch, but we are like that thanks to meat, because of physical reasons. So the effect of proteins and of all the micronutrients of meat on our brain, which could develop thanks to these micronutrients. And again, also socially, we could become farmers, so develop agriculture and livestock farming after we started to raise animal. But that was the next step. Before we were hunting, and the fact of hunting allowed a human being to organize the first way of communication, the first kind of communities, so of societies, and that's it's a lot. It's again about our human mental development, but also about what we are now.
I don't want somebody to walk away from this going, okay, so you're saying I should move to a greater consumption of meat and cut back on veggies. I don't know that we want to send that message, because I think, as you pointed out, having a balanced diet is fundamentally important, because there are minerals and micronutrients that are in the vegetables that are also extremely beneficial to our bodies.
As Italian, I am naturally promoting the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean, if you follow the Mediterranean diet, you eat something like 15 times more fruits and vegetables than meat, and it's fine like that, absolutely. So the warning is only pay attention to cut out completely meat from your diet, because that's not sustainable for your body. It's not sustainable. It's not better for the climate. It's not better for the environment. It's just a big lie with big interest behind, and it's taking people to make choices very dangerous for themselves and the environment and their children. Sometimes, as I said. So let's get back to a rational approach with food. I understand that many people need, particularly nowadays, something to believe in. And I understand that the veganism. I have nothing against veganism, but it's what is collecting all these concerns, because it's taking the climate, animals, health, everything is appealing right now, putting them together with on top big interest behind. I repeat it, and going around to say as an ideology that you can save the world and it's better for your health if you cut out the meat. It's not true. Let's get back to, as I said, a rational approach. Let's discuss with people really knowing these topics, and not that we need to follow actors or influencers who have never seen a farm in their life, and they're telling me what I have to eat. They're telling me how livestock is working. Let's go to talk to farmers, to experts, to nutritionists, to agronomists, as I did to write this short book, because we need. It's an important. It's a topic that matters, and we need to get back on track before we make damages bigger than we are expecting at the moment.
Andre, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. See you next time.